I'd like to welcome everybody with an especially warm welcome to our new parents and guardians. We look forward to working with you. We look forward to supporting you. I'd like to thank everybody for carving out some time for being here tonight. And I hope that you're navigating the complexity and challenging times we're facing as well as you possibly can. It's hard to believe that we're getting ready to start a new school year, but we are getting ready and we are working hard, and we're enthusiastic about the opportunity to work with your kids yet again. We've got two pretty simple goals tonight. One is to provide you with a brief summary of what we've been working on and how we expect to start the year. And the other one, which is maybe the most important one, is the opportunity to respond to your questions. And we have a number of folks on the call tonight who are going to be able to help us with this. We have a presentation that we think is going to run between 20 and 30 minutes. It's going to cover the following topics: teaching and learning, academic schedule and program, athletics, safety and accountability, supporting students, and student wellness. If you have a question during our presentation, please use the chat function, and then when we're done, we'll get back to the questions. And we'll go as long as we need to go. We're expecting that maybe around 8 o'clock, we'll be ready to take a break, but we're stopped. But if we need to keep going, we will. But we'll give people a chance to exit gracefully if the program is over for you. I just like to start with a little bit of background around teaching and learning, one of the first topics. We decided last spring that we wanted to elevate our understanding and capacity to deliver a strong hybrid learning program. And we did so knowing that the chances were going to be pretty strong that we were going to be in a remote or a hybrid learning model. And we also did so knowing that we've got quite a bit of experience with in-person teaching. And so this is the reason that we arranged to work with one schoolhouse this summer. In addition to offering really outstanding courses, online courses for students, they also do really good professional development. And we were able to arrange to have every one of our middle school teachers and every one of our upper school teachers do a workshop focusing on the fundamentals of planning a hybrid course that includes both synchronous and asynchronous learning. And during this program, our teachers were able to develop course design and assessment strategies that are student-centered and highly effective in virtual or in-person learning environments. The teachers refined their use of technology, tools to support active hands-on learning experiences that will challenge our students, foster creativity and collaboration, and strengthen the relationships between students and teachers, which is obviously imperative for us and something that we want to work hard to sustain and even further. The course itself confirmed for us that our core values of connecting, inspiring, and challenging our students to learn and grow will remain the core of what North Shore does, whether we're in a hybrid, remote learning environment. This work that we did will also benefit students in several practical ways. Teachers across all disciplines will use 2-week cycles for sharing workflow information and helping students focus on what lies ahead. Teachers across all disciplines will use PowerSchool to assign work and either PowerSchool or Google Docs for students to submit their work. And ultimately what we're striving for is to make this process for students as uniform and consistent and clear and routine as possible, so they're not worrying about one set of rules for one class, another set of rules for another class. And so we're going to work hard to deliver on that. And one last, teachers across all disciplines will design courses that include asynchronous assignments that extend learning via reflection, collaboration, and opportunities for students to have choice in their assignments that they do with this asynchronous work. So the workshop and the professional development was a heavy lift for everybody, but we believe that it was worth it, and we believe that we really had a solid to better than solid spring when we went to remote learning, and we are committed, whatever mode we're in, to elevate our performance and our capacity to deliver sound learning and growth experiences for our kids. So the other things that I would mention just before I hand this off to Brian Frederick is that student-teacher connections are an imperative for us, and we are going to work hard for that to happen in a variety of different ways. And the other part is that we know that we're going to have some students who are working from home, and we want to do everything we can do, and we've got a good model set up so that we can make that process interactive and engaging, and that we can support our students who need to learn from home as well as we possibly can. So that's the update on teaching and learning. And Brian's got some information coming up about our schedules and how we're going to move forward.
Thanks, Dave. The first thing I wanted to talk about was our arrival to school. Students will arrive and check in beginning at 12:15 each day. Every student will have their temperature taken when they arrive at this time. Students in morning sports will have their temperature taken beforehand during athletics. The upper school building is being cleaned once the middle school students depart. So we'd like everyone to arrive as close to 12:15 as possible. We won't be able to get into our classrooms until the middle schoolers have left the building and the building has been cleaned. Students who take the train from the north, that train will arrive before 12:15, so they can arrive early and check in at the auditorium. Fortunately, the train that comes from the city arrives at the Indian Hill stop at 12:08, so that timing will work out quite nicely and allow for students to be there for the 12:15. Students who have the first block of the day free can arrive at 1:20 for their check-in. This check-in will be at the main entrance. And students with 100% extra time who need to do a test can arrive starting at 11. This will take place in the auditorium, and students will be temperature checked, and then someone will be there to proctor their test. And you can see we've kind of created an outline for where students will go, beginning with last names, and our goal is to create consistency and routine for students. And so when they're going through this, it becomes habit after a while. The academic schedule. So this academic schedule, you can see that it basically has a day one and a day two. And our thought process behind this schedule was that this schedule provides consistency for students. With a two-day rotation, students will know exactly what to expect with the schedule, which ultimately makes it much easier for them to navigate their days. This schedule will adjust class length depending on the learning mode. So the schedule that if we're in Illinois phase 3, will shorten classes. What we learned in the spring was that students hit a point of diminishing returns when they are staring at a screen for too long. So we'll shorten classes and we'll provide longer breaks in between classes to allow students to just have a break from staring at the screen. Students with 50% extra time should be able to complete most, if not all, of their assessments during the designated class time. And students with 100% extra time will be able to use their free block on days when they have assessments in order to secure the necessary time for the assessments. If a student who uses 100% extra time does not have a free block, they will be able to begin their assessment prior to the start of school at 11 o'clock. Students will have both morning and afternoon windows to do work. This provides students with the ability to manage shorter assignments during one chunk of time and dig deeper into bigger assignments during another chunk of time. We still have community time in the schedule. Community time is something we value and see as important to have in our schedule. And so there'll still be time for advisory, intro to upper school, clubs, and affinity groups. Nearly all, if not all, athletic contests will occur during a day 2. We will shift our community time to the end of the day on those day 2s, which will minimize the need to miss any class. This schedule makes it easy to connect with teachers. Every day, teachers will be available to meet with students before school. Teachers will be available for 2 hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and 1 hour on Tuesday and Thursdays. Each teacher will inform students about their availability, and students will be able to easily sign up through appointments. And lastly, the schedule supports our theater and athletic programs, providing both morning and afternoon windows for these opportunities to occur. These opportunities occur outside of the academic day, so students don't miss class, but still have the ability to participate in these activities. What you can see here is just the phase 3 schedule, and you can see that they have those longer breaks and the class times have been shortened. For athletics. And then here's a piece for athletics, and I will hand it over to Patrick McHugh.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's great to be back, at least in a virtual capacity. I'm hoping we'll be able to see each other one day soon. There's been a lot of planning, as you can see already, by our administration, to coordinate our academic program and our athletic program and arts program, and we're excited to get started. We have been actually starting. We've had 5 weeks of a summer program, which started with just 2 or 3 days a week of outside workouts, conditioning workouts. We added eventually some soccer and some girls basketball, and eventually moved inside and did some girls and boys basketball. And part of the process of doing that was to test our procedures so we could be ready for the school year. A huge wrench was thrown in the works last week when we got the IHSA plan for this year. You've probably seen some things in the press. I've sent an kind of email out to everybody about what the dates of those seasons now look like. There's good news and bad news about it. I think the good news is that all of our teams have some time during the year when they will have a competitive season. It is not starting the way we normally expect to start, which is with the great weather we usually get in the fall, our largest menu of sports. The only competitive sports that we'll be able to schedule are cross country, golf, and girls tennis. They will start practice on Monday, August 10th. We're looking forward to those, and I believe the tennis email is still to come if you're waiting on that, but we are just confirming with a now larger group of girls who want to be part of tennis how we kind of coordinate that. But if you're waiting for tennis information, practice will be at Nielsen Tennis Center next week, Monday through Friday, 3:30 to 5. The cross-country information is out and the golf information is out. There'll be some information also for those students who are interested in or considering switching tomorrow by lunchtime about those opportunities. We've been working hard to have practices in the morning and the afternoon. We'll be able to, again, finalize a lot of that in the next couple of days. The cross country will be definitely in the afternoon, Golf will be mostly in the morning, we expect. Girls tennis may be mixed between morning and afternoon, given the large numbers of girls we have and interested in being involved in that program. One of the things that we are able to do with this new IHSA plan is have contact days, or for lack of that's what the IHSA terminology is for, practices for all our other sports. That will start September 7th and go through the end of October. Each program is entitled to 20 practice days. I don't know if we'll be able to have that, fit all those in that day, but we'll be striving to, as long as coaches are interested, and most of our coaches are interested in having those contact days. I believe next week we'll have a preliminary schedule out. But if you're not involved in or not interested in girls tennis, golf, or cross country, you can have a pretty interesting fall in that you can go, Mondays, I'm just throwing something out, Mondays soccer, Tuesdays basketball, Wednesdays track and field, and then rotate through. So you can actually have a 3-season sport experience in the fall, although it will be at most intra meaning amongst us competitively, not interscholastic competition until those seasons come along. We do recognize the fact that a lot of kids are out of some activity in August. So there is a Raider High Performance program that will run the weeks of August 17th and 24th. Again, more information will probably come to you by Friday of this week as we lock in people and personnel and a facility to do that, but that will all be on campus. The IHSA is slowly getting their information out to us as to what we can do. These aren't team practices, they're open workouts. We expect them to be fun. We expect them to be, 90 minutes to 2 hours each day. Most likely in the morning is what we're striving to do. So just to get kids together, get them back on campus, and keep them fit during that time period. I hope families will recognize the fact that we incrementally got more and more active as the summer went on. That's how you have to look at the school year too. We will incrementally expand our opportunities athletically for our students, and the competition will also incrementally improve. Initially, it will be just amongst ourselves. Then it will be initially expanding to local schools, most likely. Then if we're lucky and we're still in session this whole time, this whole fall, we'll get into more traditional interscholastic sports. The IHSA has already said that there will be no state series for this fall for cross-country golf or girls tennis, but there could be some regional type championships or culminating events. So it'll be a different fall, but we'll be honoring our tradition of trying to keep all of our kids active, involved in daily athletics and getting better. And we're looking forward to that aspect of our program getting going again. So thanks a lot.
So it's Dave Potter jumping back on, and I just want to talk a little bit about safety measures and accountability. Obviously, this is incredibly important and something that we have to do very well. I'd like to just acknowledge the work of Cindy Hooper and Lindsay Wallen Casey, who's somewhere on Lake Ontario at the moment. But from a facilities organizational perspective, we've done an inventory of all of our spaces. We know how many people can be in a classroom. We've got cleaning and sanitizing strategies, and we know that we can conduct school and schedule all of our courses. We are prepared for that. There's a lot of work that's been done. We're going to have a screening strategy every morning. There's an app that we're working on that everybody will answer several questions to make sure they're healthy and not showing any signs of COVID-19. And then we'll do temperature screenings before students go into the buildings. In terms of policies and practices, we're focusing on the fact that we need everybody to wear masks inside all the time. And we're looking at obviously washing hands, sanitizing. We're going to have traffic patterns in our buildings so that we are moving from one place to another in ways that are safe. We're concentrating on social distancing. So students, when outside, they need to wear a mask if they can't social distance from 6 feet or more. We're going to have separate grade-based orientations at the start of the year to go over all these approaches and strategies. We're trying to think through how we can help our kids be successful. So for instance, with the masks, we're going to allow students the flexibility that if they just need to get outside for a minute or two, take their mask off and breathe and then go back to class. We're going to certainly endorse that. Teachers have the flexibility of taking a quick break, taking their class, do a quick walk around the building and take their masks off. And that's also a possibility for students who may need to have a snack. No eating in our buildings, but if you're outside and you're 10 feet away from others, we're going to allow for eating. So I think part of what we need to do in this area is really have a collective communication with everybody in our community about the responsibilities that we share with one another to help everybody remain safe, that we're dependent upon the goodwill and the compliance and the support of everybody in our community so that we all stay safe. And we will emphasize that and support our kids with that. And quite honestly, we believe in our kids. We think that they will be supportive, they will take it seriously. But in the instance where somebody doesn't, we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to send them home, sort of first offense, basically, and spend a couple of days doing remote learning and rethinking some of their choices. We want to be mindful of how we do that, but we also want to be mindful of everyone's safety, and we want to make sure that there's accountability for all of our behavior. So that's the approach that we're taking around safety and accountability. And part of that will include students when they enter the building and they enter each class, they will have hand sanitizer, and then they'll also have cloths that they can wipe down their nose, so that we're going to use some student support to make sure we get our facilities as safe as they possibly can be. So Brian, I think that's that topic.
All right. Supporting our students. So, and this is, this is the work, this is why we're here, right? To support our students and help them grow and help them thrive. And so, throughout the year, there'll be more advisory meetings and advisor touch points. We recognize the increasing need for advisors to touch base with students and regularly and have ongoing communications with families. We encourage students and families to reach out to advisors and or upper school administrators with any and all concerns. Advisor assignments will be shared later in the summer. So at this point, please reach out to any upper school administrator with questions that you have. Our Student Matters process. With regards to the Student Matters process, each week we will collect information from students, from teachers about students they have concerns about, whether it's academic or social emotional. Faculty will meet as a group to share their insights and observations about the students of concern, and advisors or upper school administrators will then follow up with parents and partner to create an action plan for support. Advisors will be reaching out to families prior to the start of classes in order to introduce themselves. This relationship is so important, and it will be an important one for both students and families throughout this year. The advisor will help to provide an additional support system for students and will partner with families to navigate any bumps in the road or any concerns or challenges. In addition, upper school administrators will be proactive in reaching out to families with any concerns about students. A concern was, in this, with our schedule was, making sure that we're still supporting clubs. Clubs have been a vital part of the school for as long as I've been there. And we recognize the need for students to have a space to gather, hopefully physical, but it could be virtual, and to share their interests and passions outside of the classroom. I'll be reaching out to students shortly, hoping for clubs to begin meeting shortly after we begin school. And in addition, I'm hopeful that we can have clubs create Google sites where they'll be able to share their great work with everyone. You know, throughout the year and starting in the very beginning, faculty will be encouraging strategic planning. They're very aware of these complex times and understand everyone is facing a variety of challenges. With this in mind, we'll help students with strategies for planning out assignments. In addition, the work that was mentioned earlier that we've done with One Schoolhouse has provided everyone with tools for adding clarity around upcoming assignments and ensuring that students understand teachers' expectations. Teachers are eager to partner with students and help them maintain positive momentum throughout the year. We're going to continually encourage students to reach out to teachers and schedule times to meet with them during their office hours. And teachers understand the need for students to work on long-term projects and assignments in smaller chunks. Teachers will continue to provide windows for students to check in about these assignments in order to get guidance and feedback and progress appropriately through the assignments. In addition, we've worked to support our ninth graders. We recognize that, you know, coming into a school as a new ninth grader, there's certainly you know, complexity of coming into this high school during these times of uncertainty, and so we've made an effort to have the ninth graders feel connected early. Almost all the ninth graders have now had the opportunity to connect with an 11th or 12th grade mentor from their advisory. And the mentors are a wonderful group of students who have a variety of experiences in North Shore and are going to be a nice support system throughout the year. So it was nice for those students to make that connection early on. In addition, we've organized some Zoom game gatherings for the ninth graders, and the ninth grade chairs have organized calls between the new and returning ninth graders. And in addition, we'll have 2 orientations for the ninth graders, one on August 21st and one on August 28th. And this will be an opportunity to connect with more students and get to know some teachers and administrators. Terry, I think this is you. Oh, you have to unmute yourself, Terry.
Okay, there we go. Give me just 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties over here. Okay. So sorry. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So I know that we're all probably approaching this school year with a little bit of trepidation, but it's still really nice to be here with you and to anticipate being with your kids. As Brian said, I'm Terry Webb. I'm the upper school counselor and the director of counseling. And in thinking about the beginning of the school year, I just wanted to start with the obvious, but important, which is the uncertainty with which we're beginning the school year. Uncertainty is really a feeling that kind of lodges in the gut. It's a difficult emotion for people to stand in, especially for prolonged periods of time. I think it goes without saying that kids are experiencing uncertainty, not just related to COVID, but to the upcoming election, to racial divisions, to social unrest, and to any number of things that we could identify. Obviously, kids are going to experience a range of emotions going into the school year, including a lot of happy ones. But for many students, these moments will still be framed by the uncertainty. Understandably, uncertainty puts families and kids in a place of anxiety. And so when we look at supporting student wellness as we head into the school year, it's largely about soothing feelings of anxiety. Next slide. So routines and structure are obviously some of the first things that come to mind. And you might notice the word trauma on the slide. It might be jarring for some of you to see that word. So I just want to explain a little bit about what that means. What we're talking about here is not big T or single incident trauma, like a car accident, but little t trauma along the lines of the little paper cuts, which when experienced on the daily, like chronic uncertainty, begin to feel traumatizing. Routines offer people predictability amidst chaos. They can function as launching pads and landing pads in an otherwise unpredictable day. They reduce stress by limiting the number of decisions that kids have to make in a day, and they allow them to use their bandwidth for other things. So when you approach creating a family routine, do it with your kids and put your camp counselor hat on. When we think about camps, camps are great about appreciating kids as whole beings and understanding that they need time for chores, challenges, meals, snacks, playtime, rest time, outdoor time, time with their camp family, and time with their camp friends in order to be whole and healthy. And so the goal here is to really create a back to school normal that is soothing to kids because they can predict that their range of needs will be met. Next slide. So in addition to routines, I just want to put in a plug for rituals as well, because I think of rituals as being a little bit different, and they can be incredibly protective for people during hard times. Routines really tend to lean towards what we do, but rituals speak to who we are because they're born out of a desire to make special meaning out of the ordinary, and we become richer and deeper in the performance of them. As I was writing this, I was thinking about a roommate I had in college, a woman named Rebecca. She grew up in a really mountainous part of the country, and for every major accomplishment in her life, she and her dad would spend the day climbing a mountain that was near her home. This is obviously a large-scale ritual, but rituals don't have to be this grand to be protective for kids. Rituals tend to be meaningful because they include special people, something pleasurable that is usually shared with a special person, something celebratory, something magical, or something drawn from religion, spirituality, or family lore. Rituals can be incredibly soothing, connecting, and grounding for kids and for families when they're feeling overwhelmed. Next slide. So in preparing kids for the transition back to school, it's really important to equip them to advocate for themselves. Social distancing is counterintuitive, which is the way that it should be. And teenagers are still pretty new at learning to create their own safety. So we have to help them do this and give them permission to do this because it may feel strange and it may even feel socially threatening. So you want to talk with your kids about what it might look like and sound like, not only to ask for someone to maintain social distance or put their mask back on, but also to be responsive if somebody has a similar request. We want to help kids understand that if they have a need for a mask break, that need can be met by using their words and letting an adult know. In other words, they don't need to create risk for someone else in the community in order for their own needs to be met. On a related note, we need to understand how completely exhausting this is going to be for kids, especially in the first few weeks of school. It's important to have a catch plan in place, which for most teenagers typically involves some conversation of food and you and carefully calibrated interest. Every kid is different in terms of how much parental attention and interest they can tolerate, as we all know as parents, but it's really critical that we're there for them We want kids to express the full range of emotions that they're feeling because we ask about the full range. And it's also important that you meet your child where they are in terms of their preferred ways of communicating with you. Next. In terms of managing feelings of family overwhelm, just remember that it starts with you. Your ability to gain support that's equal to your stressors will have an obvious and direct impact on your ability to support your kids. Figure out who your people are and really lean on them so that you can share your coping mechanisms with your kids rather than taxing them with your own worries. Do daily self-care and meet your own need for separateness wholeheartedly and with boundaries so that when you're with your family, you really can be all in. If you're living with a spouse or partner, nurture your relationship because stress between parents creates stress inside kids. And I always love the 5 C's of compassion, collaboration, consistency, celebration, and self-control. These are the types of places that you want to lead from. Next slide. So it goes without saying that the behavior we see in kids might be linked to feelings that are below the surface. We always want to pay attention to behavior, but given the context in which kids are living and learning, it's important for us to really pay attention to our kids and collaborate about things that are worrying us. It's important for all of us to notice what kids are saying in moments of upset because their words might contain clues to important feelings, even if the words that they're using seem kind of teenagery. Your partner, other parents, and all of us here at school are important collaborators in supporting your child's wellness. So if you see behavior that's concerning to you or resonates as a warning sign, such as the ones listed on this slide, it's important to reach out and say something to someone. Finally, in the interest of supporting each of you and your children, we'll be sending out a parent questionnaire. It really aims to get a student-by-student understanding of what kids have been through over the summer and the previous months, because a lot has gone on and it's been very difficult for kids. It asks for narrative responses only, and that's by design. There are no multiple choice boxes. The reports go to me with, your responses will go to me with the understanding that they may be shared selectively with members of the team or an advisor in support of your child. If that's something that you're uncomfortable with, just reach out to me directly. But just know that the goal here is to really understand what you and your family have been through and to tailor our support as much as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we're now ready to try to respond to some questions and get in the chat and see what people would like to hear us respond to.
Okay, Dave. This schedule will be populated on My North Shore, right? So we don't need to print or memorize it. Yes, this schedule will be made available to everyone, and we'll post it on all the places we normally post our schedule.
There's a question about class schedules, and I know Lindsay is close to finalizing these. She gets back in the office on Monday, so I would expect that by middle of the week, we will be ready to go with our schedules.
There was a question about we will send out this presentation. So we're recording this. We'll send out the recording and we'll also send out the presentation. Will the morning asynchronous learning be structured, work on this math assignment from 8 to 9 o'clock, etc., or will it be all independent work?
Brian, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat that?
Sure. Will the morning asynchronous learning be structured, such as work on this math assignment from 8 to 9 o'clock, or will it be all independent work?
Yeah, that time will be left to student discretion around when they work and what they work on, although teachers will be suggesting and encouraging that they're using time well. And there'll be certain due dates along the way that will influence when that work needs to be done, but it's not going to be prescribed every day.
Will orientations be in person? The plan is now that the orientations will be in person, and if the plan is to have school in person, then the orientations will be in person. Where will students study when they have a free period?
We are working on locations for study halls, and I know we have them. I don't know exactly which spaces we're using, but at every point, students will be accountable to be in a location. Sometimes it will be outside. If students prefer to go outside, we'll have that supervised too. But generally, everybody will be in a space and accounted for every block of every day. And there's a question about chorus and band members, and we're still working through that. For chorus, we've purchased, Cindy, I may ask you to help me with this, self-contained units and face masks that allow for singing that's safe. And I believe we've curtailed wind instruments for the instrumental ensemble this year, but I can't confirm that 100%. Cindy, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, Dave. Hi, everyone. It's Cindy Hooper, Director of Operations from the school. Dave, we have purchased some singing masks that will be worn in the chorus room when they're working. The students then will replace them with their other masks when they're in their other spaces. I think it's to be determined about the wind instruments just yet. And we're hoping as the school year moves along and things improve, we'll be able to roll those back in. But at this time, I think we're on a pause with that.
There's a question about students who have athletic practices in the morning. Will they be able to go home, shower, and have lunch before classes begin? And the answer to that is yes, that can happen, and we encourage that to happen. There's another question, will we be able to have students shower on campus? And we believe the answer to that is, well, maybe I should preface, Cindy, I know Patrick has talked about this, but do we have a final answer on that?
The final answer right now is the state of Illinois is saying no to that. We're trying to get more confirmation and believe something may come out in the next 2 weeks, again, as more schools open. So right now we're on a pause with that as we wait for more guidance, but the answer is no at this time for facilities at school.
And I think another question or response that's not definitive, but we've talked about is the possibility that somebody might be able to go with a friend to their home and be able to eat and shower and then come back to class. So that's one that we're going to have to sort out.
There's a question about interim. We have put interim into the schedule, and it will be, at this point, it's tentatively scheduled for the spring. There's a question about how many students per classroom. Cindy, I think you're probably best equipped to answer that one.
Yes, thanks. We've gone ahead and gone through the spaces that are typically used by the upper school, which is the upper school building, the arts center, the science center, and we've gone in each room, measured the square footage, also looked at the occupancy levels according to our ventilation systems, our HVAC systems. We have just finished going ahead and measuring out each room and establishing an occupancy for each room. The students will be physically distanced in the room 6 feet as much as we can, and the teacher also has their buffer zone of 6 feet with everybody facing in the same direction as we work through this. So everything's been established. We're very blessed to have these huge flexible classrooms. Each room presents its own occupancy number. Most rooms are hovering right around the 14, 12, and 10 students per room. And so working with Lindsay, they've established which courses will go into which rooms.
I'll just mention, and Cindy, maybe you can follow up, that I don't think we talked about the air handling in our buildings, that's a really important factor with regard to keeping everybody safe. And we have very strong and very advanced air handling systems, and we're elevating the
Air filtration.
Air
Yeah, you're right. Dave, we're very fortunate. The school's campus renovations in the past 15 years have really established an upper tier baseline for our ventilation systems that we have at the school. We've elected to go ahead and add another air purification advance to our systems. Those will be getting installed in the next few weeks as well. We use high grade filtration for the systems too. So we're very, very lucky. We are able to get fresh air into our buildings in a capacity that we actually don't have to open the windows for. And in the wintertime, that will be very welcome for everyone as it gets a little chilly sooner than later.
So here's a couple of questions, and Cindy, these may be coming back your way. I'll take a stab at the first one. What if a student has a cold and no fever? Do they stay home? I think ultimately we're looking for caution around decisions to come to school. If there's any hint or signal that somebody's not well, I think our feeling is stay home, do the remote learning, make sure you're okay, and then come back when you're ready. Then there's a question around a threshold in terms of numbers of students who end up testing positive for COVID at one time before we go entirely to remote learning. So there's definitely some ongoing work with that. So do you want to just give a quick response there?
Yes, Dave. I think we're looking at the school in our lens tonight for the upper school, but we'll also be looking at threshold numbers of our school overall. It is hard to predict. So contact tracing is a term I think everybody's becoming familiar with. And we need to understand if we get a positive case of the contact, that person, it could be a faculty member, a staff member, a student, who they've come into close proximity with during their time at school that day. It is a multi-level process, and it will be based on the number of people. There is no hard percentage or number for us to throw the lever to shut school down. Each case will present itself uniquely to us, and we will be looking at and making our own internal decisions about how well can we be staffed, what is the impact on the class, attendance. I mean, if the class is only 50%, there's a lot of factors we're looking at, and we're beginning to shape that information. But each case will be an individual case, and cumulatively, they may lead to a decision about a closure for the school or just a classroom for 24 hours.
Cindy, well, are there one of the questions, any plans for school-wide COVID testing?
Thank you. That's a great question. It came up last night as well in the all-parent one. Right now, our medical advisory team, a group of parents who have gathered together to support Tom, as well as our reopening school plan, have commented, their physicians, and commented on the guidance that right now testing is not effective enough. And so at this point, we're not going to require a back-to-school test for our entire population. That's where we're standing at this. It's not a requirement of the CDC, Illinois Department of Public Health, but right now, even our medical advisory group is saying it's not necessary at this point because it's ineffective. It won't give us the information. But testing is improving, and right now it's not a requirement, but we keep examining the news and the updated information.
Dave, a question. If the hybrid model moves forward as planned, will the teachers all be in person?
So at this point, we are monitoring and conferring. We have a couple of instances where teachers have requested, for personal reasons, health reasons, that they teach from home. And we're trying to support and learn one person at a time in terms of how we support our faculty and how we manage the situation if it is to surface. So for instance, in the event that a teacher would teach from home, we would have someone in the classroom space physically there, partnering, supporting, collaborating as needed. So our teacher can still teach and the learning environment is still of high quality. But we don't have too many instances where we're working through this, but there certainly are, I believe, a couple at each division where we're trying to figure out how to support our faculty.
If a student has sports practice in the morning, where will they eat lunch before school? I think we're still working on exact locations. Certainly recognize that students who have sports and stay and make that transition from sport to school will need to eat something, and we're looking at locations as to where that will work best with regards to distancing and all of the other protocols. If a student is just not feeling well, not COVID, can they stay home and do remote learning from 12:30 to 4:25? Absolutely. That is exactly what we want. We want people to be safe and err on the side of caution. And that's why we've gone to all the steps to provide the remote option. So if people aren't feeling well, they can stay home and still participate in class.
Tom, there's a question that you may be positioned to respond to. It says your plan talks about the ultimate goal being full day in class learning. How and when will you be able to make that determination? Do you have a sense of how you want to respond to that?
Yeah, we don't, sort of mirroring the answer that Cindy gave, we don't necessarily have a metric that we'd be using for that. Really, what we're looking at right now is to start cautiously and to see how things might evolve. I would say that it probably is not something that would happen right away if it did. And I would frankly say that it's more likely that the lower school would be the one that ended up becoming a full day program first before the middle or upper, because of all the logistics around remote learning for little kids. It's a lot harder. But one of the designs behind this half-day plan is we want to make sure if we're able to open, that we can open safely, that we get our protocols and our practices down well before we have conversations about going one way or another. So it certainly is something that I think we should all be planning. If we're lucky enough to be back in school, it should be something that we're planning probably through the fall.
Cindy, I think you and I spoke about this particular matter earlier today. Will the school communicate to parents that there are positive cases, levels of positivity in the upper school among faculty or students, which, as long as it is done without personal identifying information, does not conflict with HIPAA? That's I think a question.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And again, Dave, I think you just described it the right way. There are many different levels of contact, of exposure, and the letters will be crafted as such, but we will get them out as soon as we possibly can to inform parents so we can make the appropriate decisions about what the families need as well as what we need to do at school to get it prepared and cleaned and ready to go for us to reopen. And reopening could be simply as we have to close a classroom for just 24 to 48 hours to disinfect it, if we can localize things that well. So, but the answer is yes, communication will absolutely be what we need to do.
There's a question about whether teachers will be on campus all day and where they will eat or take a break. We expect most of our teachers not to be on campus all day. Some teachers may need to be on campus, and we, at this point, I believe, we've designated the third floor of the upper school as a space that students are not going to be in during the mornings, and that there may be an opportunity for teachers who need to be able to set up shop on that floor. Cindy, is that correct?
You are correct, Dave. We've established some swing spaces for those faculty, whether it's middle school faculty who need to stay a little later or upper school faculty who need to come earlier. Once again, we have great spaces on campus, but we also are trying to encourage people to stay at home as long as possible before coming to campus. So working at home is always preferred, and then come to campus for classes.
There's a question, can students have the option to stay home for the fall semester? I can. Want me to take? Okay, go ahead, Dave.
You know, Tom, you can just correct me at any juncture here, but I think our general feeling about this is we want to do and we want to support families based on what they need. And if a family makes a decision that their son or daughter, their child is not ready or prepared or just don't want them to be at school this fall, we're going to honor that, support that, and we'll do everything we can to make sure their learning experience is outstanding in remote capacity. I think what I could say is also is that we're not interested in some sort of in and out. We're looking for consistency, and we're looking for a continuity so that we can do our best work. Tom, do you want to correct me or modify what I've said?
No, I think the only thing I would add is that you know, the instance where someone would be in and out would be if there was illness, right? And like Brian mentioned before, we are trying to make the bar so low for people if they are sick that they don't feel like they're missing out by staying home, even if they have, you know, kind of ambiguous symptoms. If you have any symptoms, we want kids to stay home. And that's why we've established this system where we're basically going to allow students to, not allow, we're going to enable students to virtually participate in classes through a camera system and through a Zoom system. That would be, so that's set up for the short term. For the longer term, like the question asked, we certainly want to be able to support every one of our students and every one of our families if we can. I think the caveat there, which just has to be said, is that it's a different experience. You know, being able to Zoom into class or participate virtually through a camera is certainly much better than what would happen, you know, in years previous. If you missed class, you missed class. But it is just a different experience than even a fully remote class. So I think as long as we're clear what that looks like, our job is to make sure that we can support all our kids and our families.
There's a question, what is the earliest kids can get to school, since it will be difficult for me to drop off my child? And we understand, and I know we mentioned the idea of getting to school as close as possible to 12:15. And, you know, while I say that, we certainly recognize that everybody, you know, has lives, and being able to drop off at that time may be challenging. And so a number of us will be there all day. And so I'd say that dropping off at 8:30 in the morning is probably going to be something that's going to be a little bit more challenging. But, you know, certainly starting at 11 o'clock, we will have the auditorium as a space to welcome kids and have them work and do whatever they need to do. And there's certainly a possibility of even earlier.
Cindy, I'm going to come back to you with a clarification on one that we just handled. I think the answer to this is yes, but the question is pertaining to communicating with parents with respect to a positive test or positivity. And the question is, will we communicate with parents even if their child was not in close proximity or not near will we be communicating in a blanket way to parents to say we had one case, this is what we've done, or will we be targeting that response, or do we still need to talk that through?
Dave, we still need to talk it through. There is an element of targeting. Again, you have a whole upper school and you may have a freshman who may have, just as an example, a freshman who may have tested positive, who never comes in contact with the seniors, but yet in the same building. And this is the kind of leveling that we'll talk about for target messaging. But yet we wouldn't need to send something out to all 3 divisions either if it doesn't affect all 3 divisions. So we are working on our matrix for that. And it's kind of an if this happens, then this happens, and this is how we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I would add to that too is that, we're obviously going to incline towards communicating more rather than communicating less. And the reason why it's still in conversation is that the guidance around this part in particular, in what and how to communicate, that's coming from Illinois Department of Public Health, for instance, is continuing to evolve. And is supposedly evolving even a little bit more over the course of the next week. So we're trying to continue monitoring that even as we define what are those things for us that are going to be non-negotiables either way.
We're 5 minutes beyond 8. I think one message that I want to convey is that to the extent that you have interest in having a conversation or exploring possibilities or just wanting to confer, we are available and will be available to talk. And we want to be as supportive and helpful as we can as we navigate this uncertain time. And I think we're in a good position, but obviously the world is changing and it's not clear exactly how things are going to unfold. But whatever we face, I think we're going to be ready to do it and do it as well as we possibly can. And we're excited about the idea of working with your kids again. That's certainly what I started with and what I'd like to end with as well. If there are any other questions, we'll hover for a little bit, but otherwise I think we might be ready to wrap up. Tom?
Yeah, as we do wrap up, or at least let people go, 2 quick reminders that I said last night, but I'll add here too. One is if you're a glutton for punishment, there's a 40-page document that we sent out a couple days ago that really has a whole lot of detail in it around particularly around the health and safety questions. So I would encourage you, if you'd like to swim through some of that, please do. And in the email and in that document, there is a reminder that there is a uniform email address that is covid@nscds.org. And if you have questions that weren't answered tonight, please feel free to use that address. It goes automatically to me, to Cindy Hooper, to Jamie Valker, our school nurse, and to Mary Fielder, our assistant head of school. And if we can't answer those questions, we can farm them out to the people who are best suited to that. So that's a great venue also, as you think of further questions that you might have to communicate with us. And we'll do our best to get back to you. It won't be within the hour. Things are a little hectic, but we'll get back to you and answer your questions.
Okay. We'll hover around, but I think we're going to wrap this up. And I want to thank everybody for attending and for posing your questions and just generally being supportive and great partners. We really appreciate it. So have a great night. Thanks so much. If anybody has a question that they didn't pose and wants to ask, you're welcome. We'll stay for a few minutes. Do we have to unmute, Brian?
Yeah, if you want to, you can raise your hand virtually, and you should come to the top of the queue, and I can unmute you, or I can also make the chat public, and so we can start with questions from the bottom of the chat here too.
Yeah.
If someone wants to.
Well, I mean, there may not be any questions remaining. So, but I guess
We've answered every question.
So
I think Sarah Rosen. Here, let me see if I can unmute you.
I can answer it, Tom. In
Okay.
regards to the type of hand sanitizer we're using, they are all FDA approved for use for our wide range of student body that we have on campus. So we have thoroughly checked it. We have all the required information for it, but we've done a good job of sourcing and getting the appropriate hand sanitizers, and we've double checked online to make sure that they are what we need to be using in a school setting.
Thank you.
Dave, there's a connection, a question that how will you encourage bonding opportunities between students? Freshmen were just getting to know each other when the year was cut off. What about school traditions that connect students with each other and with the school? With all these changes, it's clear that students will have to take more time to get the same or less done. Will the expectations be adjusted to reflect that reality? So I think the first part of the question was about helping students connect with one another. And I think that's, you know, I think we'd be lying if saying that in this environment, it's not more challenging. But I also know that's why we made a point of leaving the community time in our schedule. And the hope is to, in that community time, really leverage clubs and time for students to interact with those who aren't in their classes. In addition, there'll be advisory times where they'll be with an advisory, and if a child is a 10th grader, they'll be moving to a new advisory. They won't be in their 9th grade advisory anymore, so they'll be meeting a new cohort of students. And then as Patrick McHugh mentioned earlier, you know, the idea of providing some of the sports opportunities for those sports that were canceled is another way for students to connect with other kids. But it will be more challenging, and I think this is something that we'll continue to think about and prioritize and make sure that it's not just all about classes and grades, but there's, you know, more to it, and they're having those opportunities to get to know their classmates.
And
Dave,
just to follow up to that, we're going to try to expose 9th graders to different clubs, having them visit the intro to upper school, and then just try to be mindful of helping clubs be more regular with their meetings so that there is some consistent engagement that students can count on in this environment, which is hard to pull off. And we're thinking about expanding advisory meetings sometimes to paired advisory so that students are getting exposure to other kids. But it's a challenge. It's an absolute challenge that we have to keep our eye on. The buddy program is going to be continued for sure with the seniors and the kindergartners. I don't know the extent to which we're going to be able to continue to have buddy programming in the fall, but that's still an open question.
What happens if a teacher is sick?
Yeah, so if the teacher is sick, the couple of options I would say. One is that there's plausibility that they may still be able to teach from home. That's a possibility, not something we would expect per se, but given the way our teachers approach their work, they're rarely sick, and if they have the capacity to teach from home, they probably will. And I think we would then have someone in that space facilitating and being present. If they aren't able to teach, then we just use our normal substitute model and have substitutes come in and teach the class with notes provided by the teacher.
question, with all these changes, it's clear the students will have to take more time to get the same or less done. Will the expectations be adjusted to reflect that reality? I know that's something we've talked about since we, went to remote learning in the spring, and something we recognize, moving to this schedule. So I think the idea it's going to be about quality work, not quantity. So we want to still challenge our students and have them digging deep into whatever they're doing in the classroom, but understanding the timing, the constraints on time, and just the new reality of navigating a much different schedule. And so, as was mentioned earlier in the slideshow, was the work we've done with One Schoolhouse, and a lot of that work has been about thinking about how we assess and thinking about how we teach and looking at our curriculum. And it's not about doing more, but it's about providing, rich experiences for the students. So I can confidently say that our teachers are thinking about this and are very mindful about the new reality and all the different challenges, and are there to partner with the students.
Brian, there was a question early on that I think we might have missed, and I think you and Dave have the answer. It's, if kids have sports in the morning, when can they access office hours?
Well, I think that becomes a conversation with teachers to figure out how to make that work. Teachers will be available 2 hours a day within the 8 to 12 parameter. So there may be some instances where there's an opportunity to meet before one goes to practice, but there could be challenges there. On days that students have athletic competitions, the morning is not to be touched by athletics, so that kids would, in that situation, would still have access to their teachers. But it could be a situation that needs some negotiation and some advocacy, and I think we can help if necessary, but students are going to need to convey that to the teacher to say, when can we meet, given that I have a conflict. And teachers can do the same. All right.
Let me answer one more. Let's see, I got one that ended up coming to me. And I'm not sure if Jamie's still on the line, but Cindy can maybe help me with this. Do parents, family, students have reporting requirements? In other words, if a family member tests positive for COVID, does that family have an obligation to report that to the school? I would say yes.
Yes.
And Cindy, I'm not sure if that is a legal obligation, but I think it borders on a communal to ethical obligation.
I would say at this time, Tom, and with the Illinois State Board of Education as well as IDPH, it's not a legal requirement, but yes, they are strongly encouraging the community aspect of it for your community. A self-report to the school would help us accelerate getting the buildings ready, making sure we notify our families appropriately. The Illinois State IDPH contact tracing could notify us if there's a positive test. They will notify us, but that could take days after the fact. Again, the sheer numbers that they're going to be working with.
Dave, there was a question about how are you including diversity during hybrid learning and social distancing? And I know Dave and I have talked a lot about this, so I wonder if you want to take that one, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think our emphasis is going to be to support students in terms of communicating, sharing, having a place to advocate, to learn from one another. We are prepared to facilitate communication and sharing that helps our community and helps the individuals who are in our community feel connected and supported. And that's a major priority for us this year.
And in addition, our new director of inclusion, Lauren Collins, has been with our faculty since July, and I've been fortunate to be in a number of meetings with her, and she's wonderful and will bring amazing energy to our campus, and I think she'll be at the center of many of those rich conversations about diversity. And I know in our summer planning, that's been something that's at the front of our agenda since she stepped onto campus.
And I would just add, I had a conversation specifically about this today with Lauren, and there are lots of great resources that are available to us now that bring an equity lens to remote learning in particular. And our plan is to be using time in August with our faculty in the faculty meetings, particularly on that topic. And we've talked about how not only beyond that, but how do we sustain that? Should we be in a consistent remote learning posture, or even if we're in our half-day hybrid posture with half remote learning, how do we make sure that that's a constant part of the discussion? And Aaron's brought, Lauren has brought a lot to that conversation.
There's just a question and a suggestion that I think is a good one, which is that we've done a fair amount of thinking and supporting the transition for ninth graders, but we may want to direct some of the energy towards our current 10th grade who had a disjointed year and who just when they were getting some momentum may have disconnected in ways to their friends. So thinking about how we can help them build community together and connections is a very good suggestion, one we'll take to our small staff and to our administrative team.
Well, I think we're nearing the end here. Don't forget to use the COVID email if you'd like, and I'll quiet down and let you all finish it off. Thanks for all your work.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks for hanging around and for contributing, and we look forward to working with you. And hopefully we'll get off to a great start. So thanks, everyone. I think we're going to end the meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.